Hey guys, and welcome back to the podcast, Real Talk Fitness with AMPT. Today I'm jumping on for a solo episode. Just one of those conversations that you've been sitting in my head and in my heart for a while now. And I just know I can't be the only one who feels like this. Today's episode is one of those really honest ones. It's not me coming on here with all the answers. It's not me pretending I've got everything figured out. And it's not one of those episodes where I'm trying everything up in a neat little bow and making it look pretty. The podcast is called Do You Ever Go, Who Am I and What Am I Doing? For those of you that are just jumping on and listening, I'm a mum of two energetic boys. I've built a business from the ground up, aiming to create a community where men and women feel comfortable to be themselves and to work to the healthiest, happiest version of them, whatever that might look like. And I also love to compete in a variety of different sports, which is where this episode's coming from. I love the strength and the community of powerlifting. I love the endurance and challenge of high rocks. I also love the skill base of CrossFit. But I guess that's left me going, who am I and what the fuck am I doing? Have you ever had one of those moments where your life is busy and you're doing all these things and you're just showing up and you're getting through your days and suddenly you just stop for a second and think, who am I? What am I actually doing? Where is this all going? Not in a huge dramatic way, not like my life is falling apart way, but just in a real human way where you start questioning yourself. And I thought I'd jump onto this episode because I've been feeling that lately. And it's not because I don't love what I do. It's not because I'm ungrateful. And it's not because I want to burn it all down and start again. This comes from a place of I care so much. I care about being a good coach. I care about being a good mum. I care about building a good business. I care about being a good athlete. I care about wanting to learn more. I care about helping people properly. And sometimes when you care so deeply about a lot of things at once, instead of feeling exciting, it starts to feel heavy. And that brings me to today's episode. So let's just dive in. So I think where I've been is I've been in a place where I'm asking myself, am I spreading myself too thin? Should I be focusing on one thing? Do I need to choose who I am more clearly? Am I actually building what I want to build? Or am I just holding too many things together at once? And I wanted to really talk about that feeling to kind of get it off my chest, and hopefully anyone that's listening, can take a few things from this. Is what you see on the outside and the series that I'm running with all of these interviews with all of these amazing women, and I'm going to bring some men onto the podcast as well, is that what you see sometimes isn't always what the person feels or the driver behind it. So because a lot of people think to get to this point, especially women, busy mums, business owners, coaches, no one really talks about it honestly, the confusion, the place where you're still moving forward, but internally you feel like you're questioning everything. And I want to talk about this episode, what am I doing? And maybe even who am I becoming? I think first we'll start with the feeling of not knowing where you fit. And I think this is one of the hardest things to explain. And sometimes from the outside, your life can look like it's moving. It can look like you've got purpose. It can look like you've built something good. It can look like things are working. But internally, you can still feel unsure. And that's been a big feeling for me lately. Because I look at my world and there are so many moving parts. I coach strength. I coach conditioning. I love powerlifting. I love high rocks. I love functional fitness. I love running events and different challenges. I love building a community, and I love, most of all, seeing people do things they didn't think they can do. And when I look at that, part of me thinks that's amazing. That's variety, that's passion, and that's impact. But there's a huge part of me that starts questioning, because the fitness industry can make you feel like you need to fit neatly into one lane. Like you need to have a very clear label. You either need to be a powerlifting coach, or just a running coach, or a high rocks coach, or a strength and conditioning coach, or a fat loss coach, or just a mindset coach. And when you don't fit neatly into one box, it can start to feel like maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like maybe I'm too broad. Maybe I need to tighten up and have a niche more. Maybe I just need to pick one. Maybe being good at multiple things means I'm not truly great at one. And I think that's where the tension's been for me, because I genuinely love multiple sides of training and coaching. I love that challenge. I love that variety. And I love that one person might want to be stronger. Another might want to run. Another wants to do high rocks. Another just wants fat loss and general health. Another wants confidence. And it can all live in that same space. But lately I've caught myself thinking, does that mean I don't really know who I am? Does that mean I haven't fully claimed my lane? And does that mean I'm just floating between all these different identities as a coach instead of fully owning one? And I know I'm not the only one who feels that. So maybe someone listening, it's not fitness, maybe it's motherhood and work, maybe it's relationships and career, maybe it's wanting to grow but also wanting peace. Maybe it's feel like you've outgrown one version but you haven't really stepped into the next. That in-between space is uncomfortable, because you're not where you were, but you're also not fully settled to where you're going, right? And I think that's why these questions hit me so hard, is who am I and what am I doing? Because underneath that question is usually something deeper. And it's not just confusion, it's identity, it's pressure, and that's a huge one. It's expectation, it's fear of getting it wrong, it's fear of wasting time, it's fear of not reaching your full potential, it's fear of building something that doesn't fully align. And that's why this feeling can feel so big, because it's not really about knowing what to do next. It's about wanting your life, your work, your identity to actually make sense together. And I feel like this is weighing so heavy on me lately. Brings me to the pressure of trying to be everything at once. And last night when I sat with this properly, I realized a lot of this heaviness wasn't actually coming from what I was doing. It was coming from the pressure I was putting on myself around it. Because when I really got honest, I've been carrying this expectation that if I'm involved in something, I should be really good at it. And not just casually good, I mean properly good, right? Confident, skilled, respected, knowledgeable, capable. And I started to think, like, I've coached people in powerlifting comps, and I really want to deeply understand it inside out, back to front, inside, like through and through. And if I coach high rocks, I want to understand the same. And I talk about running, I want to understand it more and more. And if I help people with nutrition, I want to keep learning there too. And on one hand, that comes from a good place. It comes from care, it comes from pride in my work, and it comes from wanting to do it right by people. But on the other hand, I feel like it's become a trap, because suddenly every interest becomes a responsibility. Every passion becomes another standard that I hold myself to. Every opportunity becomes another thing I feel like I have to master. And that, to be honest, is exhausting, because I'm not just a coach. I was putting this unrealistic expectation to try and be a specialist in every lane I touch. And I'm not just training, I'm judging myself against what I could be. And I'm not just building a business, I also question whether I'm learning enough, studying enough, staying current enough, growing enough. And then when you add the real life onto that, I'm also a mum. I'm also running a business, managing staff, helping them grow. I'm trying to be present with my family. I'm programming, creating content. I'm doing admin. I'm trying to recover from my own training, my own mental load. And no wonder I had this feeling like this is too much. And I think sometimes we tell ourselves we just need to be more organized or more disciplined or wake up early or manage time better. But sometimes the truth is not that simple. Sometimes the issue is not time management. Sometimes it's that you're trying to hold too many identities at once and do all of them well all of the time. And no one can do that without eventually feeling stretched. And I think this especially hit me hard when I have so much ambition and vision, and I know that I'm capable, but I can keep functioning but feel overwhelmed. I can keep productive while feeling uncertain. I can keep showing up while internally feeling split. So from the outside, it can look like you're coping, but on the inside, you're thinking, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I can keep holding all of this the same way. And that's the part people don't see. They see the sessions, they see the business, they see the posts, they see all the events, they see the energy. They don't always see that mental juggling, that constant thinking, evaluating, the pressure of wanting to do great in all the things that I care about. And that pressure, I feel if I don't address that, it starts turning into self-doubt. I start feeling like, as I said, like, who am I and what am I doing? Am I failing at all these things? But because you're tired of trying to carry so much at once, this can all feel heavy. And it kind of got to me, and I, realized that it isn't an identity crisis. This is actually growth. If there's one thing that I've learned through everything that I've been through, is life throws these things at you, not to break you, but to grow you, to teach you things that you didn't know about yourself, to become more aware. So one of the biggest shifts for me came when I stopped treating this feeling like there's something had gone wrong to start with. Because I think that was what I was doing at first. I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Should I focus on one thing? Should I become a specialist? Like, what am I doing? And then I'm like, I want to study more. There's so much that I want to learn because I'm passionate about it. Yet I'm juggling being a mum. As the boys get older, the challenges change. They're getting into sport and I want to be involved with that. Yet, I'm delegating and growing the business and helping the staff grow. And I'm doing my own clients. I'm still trying to do a really good job there. And I feel like realizing that this isn't an identity crisis, it's actually growth, has been a huge weight lifted in itself. I was reading my uncertainty as a problem. Like if I was questioning things, maybe that I wasn't on the right path, or like I didn't feel fully settled in one identity. And maybe that meant I was too scattered, like I was feeling stretched. Maybe I meant I needed to shrink my vision. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized that that wasn't actually true. What if this isn't me being lost? What if this is actually me growing? What if this discomfort is not a sign that I'm off track, but a sign that I'm evolving? Because when you outgrow an old version of yourself, there's always a period that feels messy. And that refers back to one of my podcasts about that messy middle. That old identity doesn't fit the same anymore, but the new identity doesn't feel completely natural either. You're in that in-between. And in that in-between, you can mistake growth for confusion, right? I feel like you can think, why didn't I feel more certain? Why don't I feel clearer? Why does this feel so uncomfortable? But growth is uncomfortable. Expansion is uncomfortable. Becoming more of yourself doesn't always feel empowering in that moment. Sometimes it feels confronting because it asks more of you. It exposes your doubts. It highlights where you want to rise. It makes you aware of the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that gap can feel so uncomfortable. And I'm starting to realize that discomfort doesn't mean you need to stop. It doesn't mean I'm broken. It doesn't mean I've done the wrong thing. It doesn't mean I need to throw everything out and completely redefine myself. It might simply mean that I'm building is bigger than the old labels I used to rely on. And I think that's really the truth for me, is I'm not really having that identity crisis because I can't decide what I am. I'm growing beyond needing one simple label. And that's a very different thing, right? Because when I look at what I'm creating, it's not random. It's not messy in the way that I once thought that it was, like even less than 24 hours ago. There is actually a thread through all of it. It's strength, it's fitness, it's a challenge, it's community, it's helping people become more capable, whatever that might look like. It's helping people feel proud of themselves. It's giving people different ways to train, grow, and stay engaged. That's actually really clear. So I kind of realized that, this confusion of who am I and what am I doing? I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing. So maybe the problem isn't that I don't know who I was. Maybe the problem was I was trying to describe something bigger using labels and that expectation that, because I do such a variety that I need to be super good in each one of them. And that's the problem there, is that expectation is you don't have to pick one thing to be valid. And I think one of the most freeing realizations that I had in the last 24 hours is I don't actually need to choose one thing forever just to feel legitimate. And I think that message is so important because so many people feel like they need to lock themselves into one identity to be taken seriously. Like if you want to be respected, you need one title, one lane, one specialty, one very clear, simple answer when someone asks what you do. But in real life, it's not always neat. And I actually think some of the best coaches, leaders, and people in general are ones who are multi-dimensional. They don't just do one thing. They bring multiple strengths together. They understand different people. They can move different seasons. They can connect dots that other people miss. They can refer to people that do specialize in one thing and be okay with it because you're helping that person grow if that's what that person wants to do. And that's so powerful. For me, I started to see that I don't need to apologize for loving powerlifting and running and high rocks and trying to build a community where I have a variety of people that might want to try all those things. To help people's mindset, when I studied self-development, because I realized that that's a huge missing link of the puzzle. So passionate about nutrition that I want to help people understand that it doesn't have to be hard. All these things that I'm trying to put myself into one box, I started to realize that that's a strength. It's not a weakness. It's not me lacking direction. That's me having range. And there's a big difference between being scattered and being, expansive, right? Scattered is doing random things with no deeper connection. All my things have deeper connections. And I guess as a person, I'm first to put my hand up and be like, I'm not a specialty person in any of these, but I know enough of them to help get people started. And I've done enough of them myself personally to know what I need to know. And for me, that bigger vision is actually now really clear. I want to build strong, fit, capable people in a supportive environment where they feel challenged, included, and proud of themselves. And that might include, taking them to their first powerlifting comp, or that might include taking them to a high rocks event. That might mean, entering running events, like going to CrossFit fitness events. That includes mindset seminars and community events. All of those can still fit under that same vision. So I realized I don't need to cut parts of myself off just to make it easier for me to understand who I am and what I'm doing, or to make it easier for people to understand. And maybe someone listening to this podcast today needs to hear that too. is you don't need to cut parts of yourself off to make your identity easier for other people to understand. You don't need to reduce yourself to one neat label to be valid. Like, I'm an ambitious mum. I can be nurturing, but I'm also super competitive. I also want peace and family time, but I love growth. I can have structure and have variety. And you're allowed to outgrow old boxes without needing permission. You're allowed to be layered. You're allowed to not be 100% in each thing that you're passionate and teach. You don't need to be the specialist in every area. And it gets me back to that expectation and that pressure, right? Is that if I do these things that I need to be 100%, I need to be the specialist in that one. And that's not the case at all. You're allowed to build a life that doesn't fit neatly into someone else's idea of what you should be. And I guess I realized that the real issue isn't my passion, it was a capacity thing. And I think this was a really important distinction for me when I was working through this, is because for a while I thought the problem was that I was interested in too many things. But now I actually don't think that's the problem at all. The problem's not passion, it's just capacity. Is that I care about a lot, and I think that's a good thing. I love learning, I love growing, and I love helping people in different ways. So that is so many different styles of training. I like the challenge of understanding multiple areas better. That's just how my brain works as an individual. Everyone might be different. And I'm not afraid to point other people in different directions if there's someone that is more specialized than me, because that is helping them. And when this all become really hard, my life is already so full. As I said, my kids are getting older. Both my sons are playing soccer. I want to be involved with my youngest, like I was with my oldest when he first started sport. And I put my hand up to be his coach, which is another label in itself, another thing going, you know what? I actually don't even know the fucking rules. But, I don't need to know everything at once. And because when your life feels hard and it's already full on, you try to treat every interest like it deserves equal time, equal energy, and it has an equal urgency. And that's the point where I realized that is what's making this overwhelming. Because the reality is there is only so many hours in the day. There's only so much mental energy. There's only so much emotional energy, and only so much one can focus on. And everybody's 24 hours looks so different. And when you're already pouring into your family, I'm pouring into my clients, my staff, my vision of this business, this place where people can come and feel included and have the opportunity to try a variety of different things that will challenge them. It can feel overwhelming. But as well, when I put into that, sorry, I just had to pause because it kind of makes me a little bit emotional. But, pouring into your business, your training, and your day-to-day life, there's not always heaps left over for deep study or reflection or growth in every single area. That doesn't mean I'm lazy. Doesn't mean that I'm not committed. Doesn't mean that I don't want it. It means that I'm human. And I think sometimes we can be really harsh on ourselves when what we actually need is honesty. Not what can't I do anymore, but what is actually realistic for me right now. That question can change everything. Because when I asked myself that, I started looking at it through a different lens. It made more sense. I don't need to be a master in high rocks. I don't need to be a master in running. I don't need to be a master in powerlifting all at once in the middle of raising a family and growing a business. I don't need to consume everything right now. And I don't need to prove myself through overload. I don't need to feel constantly behind. What I need is a way of learning and growth that actually fits in my life. And I think that is such an important message, because we live in a world where everyone makes it sound like if you want something badly enough, you'll just make time. But that advice is too simplistic. Is that everybody's circumstance is so different, and what they might be able to fit in could look different to somebody else with a very similar circumstance. Yes, effort matters. Yes, discipline matters, and being intentional, but so does reality. And real life matters. There are seasons you can push harder. There are seasons you can study more. There are seasons where you have more capacity. But there are also seasons in your life where your growth has to look different. You might have to slow down. You might have to start looking at it smarter to be more sustainable. And that doesn't make you any less valuable. It actually makes it more likely to last, right? And that kind of brings me to, like, when I was going through this in my head is, what am I learning about doing these things in phases? One of the biggest practical shifts I'm making is letting go of the idea I need to improve everything equally at once. And this is more personal in terms of my own training, right? Because I love running. I never thought I would say that out loud. I love lifting and feeling strong. I also love the mental challenge from a high rocks race. So instead of that mindset of going, I need to improve everything equally, because that mindset, I guess, is where it led me to this podcast. Like, who the fuck am I and what am I doing? Why am I 70% good at everything? Like, if I just chose one, I could be really good at it. And then when I think about, okay, which one do I want to choose? And I can't decide. I think there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. It's that pressure and expectation of trying to fit myself as an individual into a box. If I'm trying to get stronger, improve my running, build my energy engine, get better at high rocks, understand powerlifting more, grow the business and be more present at home, all in the same season, of course I'm going to feel like I'm not doing enough, like I'm pushing shit uphill. So instead, I've rephrased that yesterday, and I was like, think of it like phases. And this is something that I think can help a lot of people that are listening. And think of it as phases, like something I think I can help in any area of my life, is that you don't have to give maximum effort at the same time. You can rotate your focus. You can honor your seasons. You can decide what gets more of you right now and what gets maintained in the background. And that has been huge, because it means I'm not quitting things. I'm not abandoning parts of myself. I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying, this is what gets my focus now. This is what's going to get maintained. And later I can shift that. And that can take so much pressure off. Because now, instead of feeling like I'm failing at multiple things, I can feel aligned with what this season's for. Maybe one block is strength focused. Maybe one block is more high rocks and running. Maybe another season is learning and studying. And maybe another season is stabilizing the business and creating more space. That doesn't mean the other parts disappear. And that doesn't mean that I'm not passionate or I'm failing. I honestly think this is such a healthier way. And it gets back to that expectation, that pressure of feeling that you have to label yourself and fit into a box. And that's exhausting. It makes you feel like unless everything's getting equal attention, you're doing a bad job, or you don't actually know what you're talking about. And as a coach and a business owner, I feel like that's huge. And even as an athlete that likes to do such a variety of things, to know that if I just focused on one, I could probably be a lot better. But accepting that that's who I am and trying not to put yourself into a box, that's real growth. And it's okay to ask different things of you in different seasons. The more I feel like I accept that, the less guilty I feel. I can still be someone who values strength, running, learning, family, and business without expecting all of them to peak at the same time. And that was a huge light bulb moment for me. And study, I fucking love learning. And when I learn, I get down rabbit holes of going, okay, well, like, what does that mean deeper? Like, I can't just take a statement for what it is. And putting that pressure on myself to learn, I feel like, learning doesn't always have to look like you're going back to school as well. So for anyone that wants to learn and increase their knowledge and, have a better understanding of nutrition or whatever it might be, is that it doesn't have to look like you're going back to school. Because I generally want to know more about running, and I generally want to know more about high rocks and powerlifting, and I want to become a better coach for those people. And sometimes that desire makes me frustrated because I look at my life and I think, where the fuck do I fit this in? And by the time the day is done, I've already made 1,000 decisions. I've coached, I've managed things, I've handled business, I've thought about everyone else, and then expect myself to somehow sit down and deeply study like I've got unlimited mental energy. And that is really not realistic. So I'm really trying to reframe what learning looks like. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be hours at a desk. It doesn't have to look like formal study. Learning can be a podcast. Learning can be making notes after a conversation. It can be 10 minutes of reading something useful. It can be listening while I'm walking. It can be one useful takeaway a day. And I think that matters because we discount small learning because it doesn't look impressive. So if you're one that wants to learn and wants to grow as a person and putting these unrealistic expectations that it needs to look like you're going back to school, please remember small learning is also impressive, and done consistently, it actually can change you. Learning one concept at a time, one note at a time, one insight at a time, that builds knowledge. And more importantly, it builds confidence. Because when you're always telling yourself you should be doing more, you miss the value of what you're actually doing. And that takes me back to one of my first ever episodes, is that I'll be happy when, constantly moving that goalpost. So try and shift that mindset of going, I need to know everything, to I want to understand a little bit more each week that feels sustainable, that feels kind and is realistic. And for me, that's what matters, because I don't want to burn myself out. By burning myself out, I'm not a good mum. I'm not a good wife. And the stress and the tension that can place in my home life makes everything harder, and it's not worth it. My family is always there for me regardless of everything else on the outside. So these unrealistic expectations that you can often place on yourself, or this pressure of fitting into a box, or specializing in just one thing and being great at it is not realistic, and that is okay. So I guess that brings me to what do I want you to take out of today's episode? Because today's episode wasn't planned. It was completely raw. I just had all these moments and I thought to myself, I watch so many amazing people, and I've had so many amazing people on the podcast, and they all seem to specialize in something. And I'm like, why don't I? And I'm like, I don't have to. So there's one thing I really want you to take from today's episode, that if you're questioning yourself, it doesn't mean something's wrong. Sometimes it means you're becoming more aware. It means you're growing. Sometimes it means you've outgrown old boxes. You're trying to make sense of this bigger version of your life. It can feel messy. It can feel uncertain. It can feel vulnerable, especially from the outside when people assume that you've just got it all together. But these moments of questioning can also be really powerful, because they force you to get honest with yourself. What do I actually want? What matters most right now? And for me, when I got honest about that, is that my kids need me now more than ever. They're going to remember if their mum was there for them. They're going to remember if mum just fobbed them off because she had emails to answer, or she wanted to learn something and that was more important than watching me go play a game of soccer. I don't want that. So that's what matters most right now. And what season am I in? I've just finished a powerlifting competition. I want to continue to grow my strength, but I have 2 high rocks races coming up. So I'm going to focus on my engine while still building my strength. So one's going to come to the forefront, and that's okay. And I try to ask myself too, what are you trying to prove? I don't need to prove anything. It's okay to not be 100% at everything. But I'm grateful that I'm 70% across most of it to be able to help people grow and lead them in the right direction for those that want to go 100% into something. And I think this is where a lot of your growth begins. So if you're out there and you're looking for a career change, or you're struggling with juggling, putting your health and fitness journey first and your career and your mum life, is you don't need perfect clarity. You don't need some magical breakthrough. But with honesty, and you've been asking yourself, these questions is, what can I simplify? What pressure am I putting on myself that I need to let go of? What am I trying to prove? What matters most right now? And what do I actually want? I want to say you're not weak and you're not failing and you're not the only one. So if you've been in a season where you're asking yourself, who am I? What am I doing? Why does this all feel so heavy lately? You might just be in that middle of becoming, and that's uncomfortable. But it's also powerful. You don't need every answer. You don't need to define your whole life in one moment. You don't need to force certainty because it's ready. Maybe right now your job is to stay honest, stay open, stay grounded, keep moving, keep learning, and trust that more clarity comes when you show up. So that's my honest share for today. This episode wasn't about pretending I've solved it all. It was really just me opening up about something that I think a lot of us feel and don't always say out loud. And I feel being in the middle. I feel the questioning of things, and I feel of trying to hold a lot and wondering whether you're doing any of it well. But I think the biggest takeaway you can take from today's episode is maybe you don't need to rush to label everything. Maybe you don't need to panic every time you feel uncertain. Maybe you don't need to have all the answers to still be on the right path. Maybe you just need to keep building what feels true. Keep learning what matters. Keep honoring the season that you're in, and trust that things will make more sense as you go. So again, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it, send it to somebody, or even just take a moment, share it and tag Ash Cummins and AMPT. I love seeing people listen to the podcast. It really does make these recordings worth it, because I really do think there's power in being honest about parts of growth that don't always look pretty, sharing other people's stories. So thank you for being here. Thanks for listening, and I'll chat to you in the next episode.